Hi, welcome to John's Jeep Garage. Today we're changing the thermostat and housing on a 2016 Jeep Wrangler JK. Now this isn't like a thermostat by itself and the housing by itself. This is one component. We chose the Duralast Thermostat housing. I'll show on the video the specific part number. We picked this up at the auto parts store, but you can get an OEM thermostat and housing, or there's multiple other parts out there. The thing that I really like about this is that it has a bleeder valve, so when we're putting the coolant in, we'll show you how to bleed the air bubbles out and the process that we use. Now, first thing I want to say, this is about being safe when you do it. So obviously when you're dealing with coolant, you want to make sure you're working on a cool engine. Do not work on a hot engine. Please use your safety glasses, please use gloves. Thank you for watching. So we're replacing the thermostat housing and thermostat. If you look at the box, we used a Duralast for this job, but that right there is the thermostat. But on this Jeep Wrangler JK, when you buy it, you're buying the housing and thermostat all in one. And we'll show you the specifics on it, but I wanted to make sure that you know exactly what we're replacing on this Jeep Wrangler JK. Let's just quickly go over a couple tools you'll need, but the specifics will be in this video. You're going to need two sockets, an 8mm socket and a 10mm socket. You're going to need an extension. You'll see this in the video. We're going to remove the air intake hose so you can have better access to this thermostat housing. So to remove the air intake hose, there's a couple ways to remove the worm screws, either with a flathead screwdriver or an 8mm socket. You're also going to have the two 10mm bolts that are holding the coolant overflow hose and the main part of the air intake hose on the frame. This just gives us access to the housing, and the housing is held on by two 10mm bolts. So basically those are all the tools you'll need, but some supplies you'll need also is a catch pan. We're using a coolant catch pan in this video. We're also going to be using a little hose to connect to the bottom of the radiator, so when we drain it, it's really clean as it goes into the catch basin. And we are planning to reuse this coolant just because we know how new it is in this particular vehicle. The other thing is we're using this funnel kit, but it's called the no spill funnel kit. You can get a variety of them. You'll see the specifics in the video. It looks like this. There's a cap that fits to your specific radiator. It seals, you fill this full of fluid, and as you are trying to remove the air, the fluid is either going down or up where you can monitor it, and when you're finished, you can just plug it in like this, remove it, and then either put this back in another container, bottle, or maybe in your overflow coolant bottle that's on the vehicle itself. Besides that, the coolant that you'll need is specified in your owner's manual, and we'll highlight this as well. And so please come along and make sure you have all your safety equipment as well. Thank you. Please refer to your owner's manual. You'll want an organic additive technology or OAT equivalent. Don't rely on color. Look at the specifics of the coolant. There's a concentrate that is indicated, as well as there's some 50/50 pre-diluted, and there's other brands available as well. Okay, the first thing you want to do is remove your engine cover so that you can have easy access. Remove the worm screw at the air intake housing and at the throttle body so that you can loosen it up to go ahead and remove the air intake hose. You still have the two 10mm mounting bolts at the front where your coolant overflow hose is attached. Once they're all removed, go ahead and carefully lift it up, because you do have a sensor attached on the bottom, the air inlet temperature sensor. You want to make sure that you position it to where you can pull the tab out and press down to remove it. Just go ahead and place this out of the way. Underside the radiator on the passenger side, you'll locate your drain valve and tube. We're attaching a blue hose to this tube. When we drain with the valve, you got to turn it 180 degrees to drain it, but we're just trying to keep the fluid clean so that we can save it. Remember to remove your radiator cap so that you can get air pulling through the system. without creating a vacuum. And now we're just letting it drain cleanly into the bin. Once you feel you've drained it all, go ahead and close it. Remember to turn it clockwise 180 degrees. Okay, on your particular filler kit, you need to find the filler plug and cap that fits the vehicle, and then you want to make sure you install that before you put on the funnel. You can do this now or later, but go ahead and put the funnel in place. Make sure it seats correctly and is secure. Then you can go ahead and put the plug in it and let it just sit while we go ahead and remove the housing. So in this video, Darren and I removed the air inlet temperature sensor out of the way. Quite honestly, it's a pain. It keeps hanging in front of the inlet hose and housing that we want to work on. So we just zip tie it and we'll clear it later. Now here's the hose clamp. You can buy a specialty tool. We just use the tongue and groove pliers. Set the opening correct, press it down, and just move it until it loosens up, and then we'll just slide it down the hose. Very simple without a fancy tool.
Yep.
Grip and remove the coolant hose from the housing. Use another catch pan. Because this hits other parts of the vehicle, we do not reuse this coolant. Alright, get your ratchet, socket, and extension. Remember, it's 10 millimeter for the upper and lower housing bolts. And go ahead and remove them.
Very tight.
The bolts are not that long, and they have a very light torque on them. Go ahead and remove the housing. Should be a seal on it. Seal is stuck to the main cavity. Go ahead and peel that off, and we'll need to clean that up. I use brake clean because it removes grease and oil and that old rubber residue, and it really dries fast. If I don't have that, I'll try some alcohol. Okay, so I'm just comparing the housings, and I'm also making sure that the seal is on the new housing. I highly recommend that you open up the pressure relief valve before installation versus after installation. And now we'll go ahead and put the new housing on, and we'll tighten up the upper and lower bolt. I do not use a power wrench to tighten all the way. I go ahead and hand tighten it. This is a very light torque. It's 9 foot-pounds or less, about 105 inch-pounds. Just use a snug fit and a little bump of the wrench. Okay, slide the coolant hose back on. We check the hose for wear, and now let's move that hose clamp up. Again, I use the tongue and groove pliers. I slide it up. I inspect to make sure everything is snug and secure. Okay, make sure the engine is off. And go ahead and pour your new or old coolant, reused coolant, back into the funnel. And you're going to keep monitoring that pressure relief valve for leaks, but make sure that you're hearing air. As this is starting to pour into the system, air bubbles are coming up, but you don't want to have trapped air in the system. So keep looking for air bubbles. There it is, as you can see on this video. Make sure the bubbles disappear and it looks like a stream. Then go ahead and hand tighten it up, and I also wait a little bit and then open it again just in case there's some trapped air. Then I go ahead and I tighten the valve up, but it's just a little bit of a turn, nothing too hard. It's plastic. Here I'll demonstrate on the old one. Then let's dry everything up and clean it because we want to be able to know if there's any new leaks. Let's reinstall everything. Let's get the inlet temp sensor loose. Notice the bottom groove on there. That aligns with a groove on the air inlet hose. Connect everything, let it snap back in place, and then go ahead and position the air inlet hose back to the throttle body and to the filter housing. Go ahead and connect those for the two 10 millimeter mounting bolts on the front of the air intake hose. What's really important is that the coolant overflow hose is not pinched underneath. Make sure it's above. Alright, go ahead and tighten the 10 millimeter mounting bolts up. Don't over tighten if using a power wrench. Also tighten up the 8 millimeter worm screws on both ends. Again, don't over tighten those. Inspect everything. Do not put the engine cover back on at this time because we are going to start the engine and monitor everything and still want to have visibility underneath. We're going to start the engine, and then we're going to turn the heater on high and full fan, and we're going to let it run for about 10 to 15 minutes. This coolant inline hose going into your radiator will get hot when the thermostat starts to open. Normally it does that about 203 degrees. We're going to monitor the level for fluid, we're going to monitor for leaks, and inside we're going to be monitoring the temperature of the vehicle. Okay, when you turn your Jeep engine off and allow the engine to cool all the way, it will suck up a little bit more coolant. Once you know that all coolant is in there, plug it up and then transfer that into either another bottle, in a containment unit, or in your overflow bottle. There is a min-max line on an overflow bottle. I would guess it to be about 30% full. Okay, go ahead and put your cover back on. After that, you're going to start your car, take it for a drive, and for the next day, keep monitoring the level of your coolant fluid. All right, so that's a wrap on this job. A couple things. Number one, you want to keep monitoring the coolant and the temperature when you drive the vehicle. Even though we did what we did, we tested it, we let it cool down, you still want to do a couple checks just to make sure it has the right amount of coolant. The other thing that's also important is that you're checking for leaks. So after you finish the job, we dry everything off. We just want to make sure everything was sealed correctly. Nothing is leaking from either the cap, any hoses, the relief valve on the housing, or the seal of the housing itself against the engine block. So thank you for watching, and we hope this video helped.